How to restore the Republic. I'm going to outline 8 steps that are all necessary to restoring the constitutional republic of the United States of America. The principles are general and will work anywhere to restore or establish freedom. I will be using Utah in the United States of America as an example for some of these. First, end signature gathering nominating petitions. For example, Utah's infamous SB 54. Signature gathering nominating petitions consist of going door to door to gather signatures to put a candidate on the primary ballot. Once a certain threshold of signatures is met, the candidate is automatically placed on the primary ballot. In Utah, this threshold has been 28,000 out of about 2 million voters, by the way. So that's less than 1.5% of all registered Utah voters are allowed to outweigh the voice of the people through their nominating conventions. This spells tyranny by minorities. It's also a spending game to get on the ballot because it's not that hard to find 28,000 people as long as you can fund the staff of people who can go door to door to find them. That's exactly what Spencer Cox did in Utah. He spent around $300,000 just paying a company to go do it for him. Finally, SB 54 and similar initiatives are designed to force a mandatory primary. Why would they do that? You can read more about that at Count My Vote on Wikipedia. The result of this is that you get a system that is extremist because, frankly, 28,000, like little over a percent of your population, is much more likely to have extreme views than, say, I don't know, 90% of them who are able to go and show up and vote in a more grassroots system. It also is also pay to play, which, again, extremely problematic because the more wealthy you are, the more likely you are to get elected, or in this case, reelected. Number 2, end democratic primaries. Democratic primaries are a form of popular vote nomination. Interestingly, there is already a nominating system in place in Utah for candidates. It is called the caucus convention system. At a caucus, neighbors vote for people they actually know and trust to represent them at a nominating convention. And then those delegates then vet and nominate the candidates in person. They have access to go and talk to these candidates in person. You can't do that in a primary. Primaries, by contrast, are by popular vote. And since most of these people, like almost all of them, have never even met and don't have any realistic chance to vet these candidates outside of like news media and other filtered lenses, they're going to have really poor outcomes. Primaries were added in 1937 in Utah, at least. They were added throughout the United States, but they were done as part of the progressive movement. Think about that. Let that sink in. I've talked to people in Utah, and so many of them are just like, "Oh, we can't take away primaries. They're part of our system, and we're conservative, so we can serve this." But you don't even realize it's literally a democratic popular vote system that was installed as part of the progressive movement. So I guess we're all progressives now. The intent of primaries was and is to replace the grassroots caucus convention system with a flood of just less informed and untrustworthy votes, because you can't match the informedness of a group of people who actually have access to the candidates and who get to vet them thoroughly. Most people, by the way, don't even have time to do that. Most people, I don't think, even want to do that. Um, and so it stands to reason that we should instead adopt this route of choose people to represent you that you trust, have better than average judgment, instead of just sticking with, average or majority rules kinds of things in a completely uninformed or relatively uninformed arena. Notably, primaries are not authorized under the Constitution. There's no authority to conduct these democratic types of elections, especially not to undo a previous election like a caucus convention nominating system. Also, primaries, they're a function of name recognition and spending. So that means this whole thing is, yep, spend money, get more votes, right? Really not a secure way to do elections. Number 3, end popular vote general elections. The November general election is by popular vote, which is sometimes done district-wise, but regardless, it's still a popular vote. Popular votes are, again, a democratic voting instrument, not a Republican one. And a really valid question to raise is, why do we just vote 2 or 3 times in the same race? I think that's a very good question. That the purpose is to give mobocracy and corruption multiple chances even, to reverse those Republican outcomes, all while pretending to be in favor of the voice of the people. But it doesn't address why, for example, you get different outcomes the more informed your voters are. The more informed voters tend to vote more Republican. Unsurprisingly, I hope, but this is the fact of the matter. So again, in these general elections, people are voting like your grandma gets this ballot. And she's like, I don't know any of these people, right? But I know John down the street. He's a really good guy. I'd vote for him. Well, the grassroots convention, caucus convention system gives you the chance to vote for someone you actually know instead of flooding the system with all these completely irrelevant votes from people who don't even know. Like they're like, I don't even know either way. Oh, it's Republican. I guess I'll just check that box. That's how we get hoodwinked into voting for false candidates who are candidates who are falsely taking upon themselves the label of a particular party, even though they don't remotely mesh with those values. Really easy to deceive people if there's like no information imparted, right? So in reality, ignorance and money are what dictate outcomes in a general election. We all know this. Everybody knows this. And so, I mean, again, it's spend to win. Popular vote, general elections, democratic method, money wins the game. Step number 4, stop binding electors. So binding electors was an idea that political parties came up with to force them to vote a certain way. It was usually according to, like, let's say a popular vote, again, that popular vote thing, democratic system, or using a proportional, using a proportional or winner takes all rules. This is very problematic because it's kind of like your neighbors just elected you to represent them, but then they turn around and say, you're not actually free to vote. We're going to tell you how to vote. Really? Well, then why did you elect me? That makes no sense. I mean, are we all just going to show up to the White House and just like have a popular vote on everything? That's not a Republican way of doing government. You should actually trust the people that you choose as delegates and the people you elect to represent you in government. So again, ignorance rules the day. Ignorance is what comes out as a result of binding electors. So it's actually a less empowering electoral method. And the Constitution requires that electors be chosen. So by definition, a bound elector is not an elector at all. He's not free to choose. He's just merely a puppet, right? Hey, puppet, go represent us in the Electoral College. It's a complete sham. So, and the Constitution guarantees a Republican form of government, not this, hey, bind your electors, hey, go extort them, hey, go and do this Democrat stuff. Not a Democratic form of government, but a Republican form. So again, you bind your electors, you get, it's not a free election. It's free meaning unbound, like you're actually constrained, you're forced. They'll essentially say to you, this is how they get binding of electors to take place, is they say, you know what, if you vote this way, we'll punish you. That's literally the deal. In so many states, under the modern fake electoral college that we have, you get punished for voting a certain way. Why? Because those who want to sabotage the system want to force you into a democracy and erase all of the benefits of a republic. In a republic, you can actually vote according to your conscience, and you get to vote for people you actually trust. Again, you can't really learn to trust them if you don't actually get to know them. Okay. Now, step number 5 is end the two-party system. So the two-party system disenfranchises third parties. We already know this. Even when the third-party candidates could have enjoyed a majority of support, and this happens because of the spoiler effect, where if you like two candidates, you can't actually vote for both of them because the way we do balloting and vote counting nowadays, you're not allowed to vote for more than one. You're not allowed to express that. Let's say you have two candidates and they're both really great, and there's a third one who really stinks. The voters are going to be divided over the two good candidates, and the worst candidate's just going to win. So many people think there's no way around this, but that's not true. So this two-party system, it's not actually an unavoidable consequence of representative government. So in fact, the Constitution itself originally prevented two-party systems from forming. And it did that through the way that the votes are cast and counted. Fascinating stuff. But the 12th Amendment actually stole voters' ability to support more than one candidate, which then caused this spoiler effect, which eliminated third parties, which forced us into this two-party system. So originally, electors could actually vote for more than one, and that's the secret sauce. There's this really great recipe hidden in the Constitution. I've never heard anyone come out and say, hey, this is in the Constitution. Like, what? But yeah, two-party system, totally bogus, totally fake, not original to the Constitution. The Constitution originally prevented it, and the 12th Amendment changed that. So it should be repealed. Political parties themselves are not even granted any authority under the Constitution, and yet they manage to control, together with our government, who is even allowed to appear on your ballot. Talk about a stinky end around. So again, they're stealing your voice. Your ballots literally became less expressive. You were less able to inform your government by the choices that you make because of this sabotaging, this change that happened. And this really series of changes that has been taking away your power and placing it into the hands of parties that are in cahoots with the federal government Oops, they're stealing your voice. If you want to learn how this happened, you should visit constitutionalvote.org to learn how the national two-party system stole the voice of third parties and your voice as well, most of it. And if you've wondered why we have such lackluster presidential candidates, you need to find out how the parties subverted the Constitution to get us to where we are. Step number 6, we need to defund the Federal Reserve. This one's kind of obvious, but the Federal Reserve is not federal and it's not a reserve. It is a money printing machine and it's a fiscal policy hydra. They basically control your life. They're the number one reason probably why housing is expensive right now, one of the biggest reasons, and why inflation is even a thing. Inflation doesn't even need to happen. In fact, the Constitution expressly forbids inflation. Absolutely no one should even be toying with the idea of just controlling inflation or making it less bad. It needs to be gone. It needs to be gone. And until it's gone, we will never be a free people and we will never enjoy a republic. So the little fun fact here, the bill in dollar bill means bill of credit. Note in Federal Reserve note, you can see this on a dollar bill. It means promissory note, or in other words, IOU. How much are the government's promises worth, do you think? A lot less than a real dollar, I can tell you that. In fact, the dollar has inflated more than 3,000% since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. So if your ancestors had put a nice little nest egg into savings in 1913 of $100, it would have the purchasing power equivalent of less than $3. After all that time had passed, the government just literally stole 97% of all privately held wealth since the inception of the Federal Reserve in 1913. Now you know. The Constitution specifies that nothing but gold or silver shall be legal currency. This is great because you can't print gold or silver. I've never seen anyone do it. As far as I'm aware, only stars can make it. So really good stuff. And Congress, by the way, is complicit. It has been for a really long time in counterfeiting U.S. currency. And it always will be until they change this, until they pull the plug on the Fed. And of course, as we know, given all of the methods that we've reviewed, the democratic spend to win methods, money translates to political victories. So if you want to end out-of-state funding, you need to end the national two-party system, and you need to end the Federal Reserve. We will never have free and fair elections until the Federal Reserve is gone. Yeah, they're just straight up stealing your money. 7, we need to restore jury trials. This one will probably seem a lot less obvious to a lot of people because we have like close to zero experience with jury trials. Our experience with jury trials comes largely only from like soap operas and Hollywood fake reality TV and like an occasional news proceeding about, televised proceeding of some murder jury trial or something like that. But it used to be the case that every criminal case in the United States was accorded a jury to hear the case. The Constitution of the United States says the trial of all crimes shall be by jury. There are no exceptions anywhere. There's an exception in civil cases to say if the amount in controversy is greater than $20, then you have a right to a jury trial. But there is no such limit for jury trials. There are very, very good reasons for that. So one reason, anyway, why this is relevant to election security is that who is in office actually matters a lot less when the execution of justice is in the people's hands. There's this thing called jury nullification. It's 100% constitutional. If there's a bad law, and Hitler has this bad law that says you have to reveal where the Jews are, and you say, no, I'm not gonna, and they're saying, well, we're gonna punish you. Guess what? Guess who gets to make the verdict of whether or not you're guilty? A jury of your peers. And they have to be randomly selected, and they have to be people who are like you. They're from the same district, same area, and so you get this random assortment of just average Joes, people who aren't in government. They just want the government to leave them alone, And if the law is a good law, like you murdered somebody and you should be punished for it, then they'll have a motivation to punish you for it. And if it's a bad law, then they'll have an incentive to say, I think that's a bad law. We refuse to convict you. You could stop mask mandates or any other bad stuff with this. Yeah, and the government can't fine you a cent without a jury hearing your case first. So this is a really good thing because frivolous laws will evaporate. We'll actually begin to have judicial review, which is great. It almost never happens today. Judicial review is when the judiciary reviews an executive action or a legislative or law and says, hey, that's unconstitutional, you can't do that. The jury can actually say, hey, that's unconstitutional, you can't do that. And no matter what even the judge thinks, there is no prosecuting you over a law that the jury thinks is unconstitutional. This is how you stop Hitler. Jury trials are how you stop Hitler. If you're worried about Hitler in the White House or whatever, go and promote jury trials. This is what's going to save you. The checks and balances are really they're just fake. They're just smoke and mirrors as long as you don't have jury trials. Thomas Jefferson called jury trials the only anchor by which governments can be held to their constitutions. This is true. History is proving it right before our eyes. Step number 8, finally, is you get to vote for people you actually know. So this is the solution at the end of it all. I've told you a lot of things we shouldn't do and told you one thing we should restore. Here's one other thing. In a real republic, you get to show up in person to a nonpartisan neighborhood meeting of registered voters. Now, seeing as they're your neighbors, they're very likely to be people you already know. They're the most likely quorum of people on Earth for you to have some everyday acquaintance with, at least. Also, I've heard this critique that caucus convention here in Utah stinks and not enough people participate because they can't get off work or whatever. Just make it a federal holiday. Just make it a federal holiday, and then everyone who's a registered voter can show up to vote. Where's the problem? The problem is we're not willing to support the republic. So identifying your voters, credentialing is a piece of cake because it's like, hey, I know you. Hey, Bob. Yeah, you can show me your photo ID if you want, but I'm already convinced that it's you, right? It's the easiest possible venue for verifying that the people who vote are actually who they say they are, because there's no mail-in ballots, there's no monkey business like that. It's just you show up in person. And you vote by a paper ballot, no computers, no machine. You don't need computers. You never did. You don't even need computers in the bigger races. But anyway, and you can watch the vote counting with your own eyes. It's super easy to audit. And you get to listen to your neighbors, get up and talk and discuss, and you can ask real questions. You can get up and talk. You can discuss and debate these issues yourself. You can run as a delegate too. You can be one of the few that's selected, one of the delegates who are selected to represent you at the nominating convention. It's a fair amount of work, so you got to put in the elbow grease, but it's really worth it. And then the delegates go and vet the candidates, and they remain in communication with their constituents, and then they hold a convention, and then they just directly elect the public officers out of the candidates who are running for the office, because they've gone and they've vetted them. They know who they are. They know which ones are bad. They know which ones are good. They've talked with each other. They've talked with their constituents. You're maximizing the information available to people under a republic. Under a democracy, you minimize the amount of information that's available to them. Everything is filtered through these televised media debates and everything. Like, this is the exact opposite of that. This is like, if you ever just wanted to go and ask your senator a question, get an answer on something, you can. If you go and you participate in this caucus convention system. And afterwards, the delegates, the voters, and the elected officials continue to communicate, which is great, because elected officials, they can't respond to a million emails, but your delegates can respond to your concerns and escalate them to these elected representatives. So in summary, you have a system that's fair, it's representative, it's one where we prefer wisdom and integrity more than money, and we actually trust the people that we're putting into office because we actually know them. It's a night and day difference. If you want to live under perpetual darkness and night misery, then go be democratic. But if you want to enjoy wisdom and integrity and actually have good people representing you and be in open communication with them, you really need to restore the republic. So in summary, please join me and restore the republic, or else you will end up in a situation where, if your vote in theory still counts for anything at all, it gets derailed through cherry-picking signature movements, it gets overruled by ignorant name recognition and spending, and all the decent candidates get left out because they aren't divisive enough to compete in the two-party system. There you have it.